Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni wanji, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jed Lee, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and so very honored that you join us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to tell all of your family and friends about the show. Please tell your kids, teachers, librarians, principals, and please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Good Pods, wherever you find your podcasts. Our guest today is Katie Krause. She is here to celebrate Don't Say No to H2O. Before we invite Katie into the studio, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by Rex's Journey, helping children understand and cope with emotions, written by Dr. Ambrose Turner. Looking back on childhood, you might recall everything bopping along swimmingly, playing with friends, loving your family, waking up each day happy and bursting with exuberance. Then you might recall your emotions getting in the way of all of that, and suddenly nothing is quite so simple. Rex's Journey, helping children understand and cope with emotions, does just what it promises in the title. A kid's emotional landscape is full of hills and valleys, and kids in Rex's situation might very well experience similar fears when faced with this uncharted territory. To help guide young navigators, Dr. Turner steps in. Dr. Ambrose Turner is an expert with over 20 years of experience working with children of all ages. Get your copy today. It's a really valuable addition to any family or classroom library. Rex's Journey, helping children understand and cope with emotions, published by Mascot Books and written by Dr. Ambrose Turner. This episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is also brought to you by The Oasis King, the thrilling middle grade novel by Mark David Pullen. The Oasis King is the first book in the Oasis Chronicles series. The Oasis King combines action and adventure with science fiction and fantasy. It is the story of three young cousins who are transported to a strange and primal paradise known as the Valley of the Oasis. There they meet a lone hunter and his three dogs, who are also trapped there, locked in a conflict with a malevolent stranger, a green-skinned man from another time and place. The story follows the quest to get the boys home before the stranger has his way once and for all. You're going to love this. It really is a thrilling middle grade novel. It's a great addition to any family library, and what a great book to co-read with your kids. Imagine the great conversations you can have on your way to soccer or ballet or school. Get your copy today. The Oasis King by Mark David Pullen. Join us right now from the great ocean state of Rhode Island. Our guest is here today to celebrate. I think it's a really important book. It's called Don't Say No to H2O. Please welcome to the show, Katie Krause. Hey, Katie, how are you?
Hey, Jed. It's nice to meet you. Thanks so much for having me on the podcast.
I'm delighted. I'm delighted to have you on. Excuse me, I just have to have a little H2O myself here. Very important for podcasters to stay hydrated. Tell us about this book. What was the inspiration? Who are we going to meet in the pages?
Absolutely. So the inspiration for my book was actually based off of me. As you mentioned, the book is called Don't Say No to H2O, Water is So Good. And I essentially got this inspiration because for most of my life, I've actually struggled personally to drink enough water. It's something that, I don't know, since childhood, I've just really had this problem with seeing water as beneficial. I've always really liked the taste of soda or something with a little bit of flavoring. And so to me, drinking water was somewhat difficult growing up. No one ever forced it down my throat or anything, but you definitely always heard people tell me time and again, it's so important to drink water. It's so helpful. It's so beneficial for you. And so there's one day where I just had some downtime and I sat down at my computer and it just came to me in a day. I started writing the book, and it's essentially about a young girl who refuses to drink water. No matter what you do, or how much it's offered to her, she doesn't want it. And her parents tell her all the time why it's beneficial for her health and how it can help her, but she still refuses it. And she talks about how she'll drink milk and she'll drink juice and she'll do all these things. She'll use water in a lot of different ways, but she won't drink it. And then you see as she gets older that she starts to change her mind about it as her parents start telling her all the benefits about it. And then she comes around and she discovers that she really likes it. And so the main purpose of the book is to really encourage children and adults to drink more water and why it's so critical to your health and overall well-being.
So why don't we just remind people why it is so important for us all, kids and adults, to make sure we keep hydrated.
Yeah, hydration is so important. Everybody has to drink water to stay active and to stay busy and to do the things that they want, like being able to go outside and see their friends. It keeps them, hydrated as they're on the go. It helps with their complexion and their ability to focus and think at work and at school. And it's just overall really good to keep you in a great mood. So there are so many amazing benefits to drinking water that people don't realize. I've had, a couple of close encounters where I didn't realize I was dehydrated and I almost came close to collapsing. Mm. And, it's during those scary moments that you're like, wow, I didn't realize. I thought I was okay, or I thought I was drinking enough. And sometimes, even when you're not thirsty, my mom always says, drink water, right? I always waited until I felt thirsty to drink water rather than drinking it just every day, throughout the day.
Yeah. And I think you experience what a lot of kids experience and that a lot of parents listening may be frustrated with is the fact that you can't get the kids to drink water, but they'll drink some juice and they'll drink some soda and, the sports drinks that are loaded with sugar. I mean, it was frustrating for me. I thought, my kids, they're drinking juice and that's great. And then next thing the school nurse is saying, that is loaded with sugar and there's so much sugar in there and that's not good. So, it's, I don't know. Do you think it's the fact that all those sugary, delicious drinks are so accessible? Is that one reason that sometimes some kids have and some adults have a hard time making sure they drink enough water?
Yeah, I think, as a kid, everyone can relate to wanting that sugar high or having that drink that has a lot of flavor. They don't want plain water. Same thing with trying to get a kid to eat their veggies, right? They'd rather have chicken nuggets and French fries and all those wonderful things that we loved growing up as children. And sometimes we just got to spin water in a more favorable light to make it fun rather than something that we feel like we're pushing down kids' throats, right? If we make it fun and, for me, even to this day, it's still a struggle for me to drink water. And so I've had to find different techniques, whether it's getting a water bottle that encourages you to drink. Okay, you hit this much. Okay, keep drinking or keep going, right? You see people walking around with those water bottles or flavoring it. I have little packets of that I can use to flavor my water. And so it tastes very good, but it's not super sugary, right? I don't put the whole packet in. I put a little bit, just enough so that I don't feel like it's boring or it's not something I'm going to enjoy. Yeah. And so I found those little techniques along the way so that I can still get my water intake, but I'm also, feeling like it's enjoyable.
Yeah. You mentioned before we started that you're in the biotechnology field and you're doing some great things with an amazing company. I'm guessing that being a children's author wasn't something that was on your I must do list, or was it?
It wasn't. And that's the crazy thing is I never had this incredible urge to be a children's author. I've always had a bucket list of things that I wanted to accomplish or things that I felt would be great to try and strive for, but I was never like, I want to be a children's author. But one day, like I said, I just sat down and I've always enjoyed writing. I've been very good at it. I actually participate in a little bit of communications work as part of my job. And so I've always had a knack for writing. And I think that, the job that I do in the biotech industry, our goal is to really help our patients, to bring medications that are going to help people with various disorders. And, I think having this book out there in the world is going to spread a very important message to both children and adults about the importance of drinking water. Just since having published this book on Amazon, I've had a couple of adults come to me who said, I actually have, my own struggle with drinking water, or I have a child who is on the autism spectrum and she refuses to drink water, and this book is going to help her. So I've already gotten some really great feedback from people just about how important it was and what a great message. Mm-hmm. And I'm really proud because when I was starting to write this book, I noticed that there wasn't a lot of material already out there in the world. And that's actually one of the things my editor had actually pointed out to me when she was reading my manuscript. She was like, wow, this is a great message. You'll hear a lot of books that talk about clean water and things like that, but you don't hear a lot of stories encouraging or talking about the benefits of water. Mm-hmm. And so I was really proud that I was hitting a different niche and, spinning it in such a fun way that a lot of kids and adults can relate to.
Yeah. Well, I can attest from personal experience. I just spent a month or so in the hospital, and I know that my amazing nurses and therapists would come in and they would make sure that I had a big full glass of water. And we're not talking about an 8-ounce glass of water. It was I think it was a 64 or 32-ounce glass. It was just, and they were like, yeah, you got to push this. And, but it's so very important, and not just for the athlete who's out there, sweating buckets. It's for every single person. Is there a magic number or a certain amount of water that kids should be drinking every day and a different number that adults should be drinking every day?
Well, I think what it comes down to is it's really based off of your body weight and certain factors that really influence how much you should be taking in. Like for me, I've always been pretty thin. 5'2", and I'm, about 100 pounds. And so I should be drinking at least half that or more in ounces just for water intake. And I try to do that. I'm not saying I'm successful every single day, but I try to reward myself just knowing that I'm striving toward a better goal of drinking water. Not every day is going to be, I'm drinking the amount that I need, but at least I'm pushing myself every single day knowing how essential water is.
Yeah.
And actually, there was, like you, an instance a while ago where I was in the hospital because I had a kidney infection, and they encouraged me so much to drink water. And, even my own mother was reminding me, and it really got me through that tough time. And a lot of people don't realize just how critical it is to just their overall well-being so that we can continue to function and do all the things that we want in life. And, it doesn't have to be a painful thing. There are so many different ways that you can enjoy water.
Yeah.
And you just got to find that technique that works for you, whether it's putting fresh fruit in your water bottle or maybe putting in a little bit of packet. Some people like their water room temperature. Some like it cold. I personally will not drink water if it's room temperature. I love it to be fresh and cold, but you got to do what's right for you, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important to remember.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. So you've already had feedback from adults letting you know that your book is making an impact for their kids and also for them. How does it feel? Was that a surprise that you had that feedback so quickly? And is it motivating you to write more children's books?
It really was. It's such a boost to your self-confidence. Just like, wow, I can do it, right? It starts off as just kind of a fun project to do, and, seeing the fruits of your labor really come together into a physical book. Now, my book is only available as an ebook, but, the feedback that I've gotten has been very, very positive, and it's only further incentivized me to continue writing. And I'm actually in the process of writing my second book, which has just finished going through my children's editor and illustrator, and that should be up soon. It's called I Love You, My Child. And that is all about unconditional love, a parent loving their child no matter what, whether they are rude or they're upset or they continually make mistakes. It's so important to just remember that, a kid is a kid and we're going to love them no matter what.
Yeah. That sounds like a book that is just as important for an adult to read as it is for kids to have read to them.
Yeah, it definitely is. I think that one of the things I really like about writing is that you can find content that can be relatable to both children and adults. And one major critical piece of this second book is that the main character, this little girl that's about 6 or 7 years old, has a disability. So she actually has a prosthetic leg. And that's something that a lot of children are not going to see in children's books. They don't see a lot of diversity and a lot of representation. And I personally have a physical disability myself, and I wanted that book to be reflective of who I am as an individual. And I think it's really important for parents and kids to have conversations, which is what this whole podcast is about. It's reading with your children, spending that quality time with them, and sharing a message that is so important and that they're going to take with them for their entire lives. So that when they are adults and they have their own children, they're going to remember these times when, they listened to their parent, they sat down with their mother or father or uncle or aunt and read a book. And they're going to remember that story for the rest of their lives.
Yeah. And one of the things that I really hope is that parents understand that these conversations that you're having with your 3, 4, and 5-year-olds as you're reading great storybooks like Don't Say No to H2O, Water is So Good, that this is just the start. And it's getting you into the habit of having those conversations so that last night I mentioned to Katie about my amazing niece who I adore, and we hadn't seen each other. We're constantly in contact with each other, but we hadn't been in the same physical space for a while. She's a busy college kid. And last night we got together and we spent about 7 hours together. And about half the time we're watching a really fun but creepy TV show. But we talked about it the whole time. And it was like, yes, this is what I mean. It's like, yes, you talk about the great picture books like Don't Say No to H2O when your kids are younger, and then you start talking about the music that they're listening to in middle school, and you graduate to movies and the stuff that they're reading on social media. Just having those great conversations, it's a gift. I think it's just as important as drinking water.
Absolutely. I love the way that you get so excited when you talk about it, because it really is important for parents to be just as involved. Their kids are looking up to them and they see them as role models. And so what they're going to like or what they're going to eat or drink, they're probably going to do the same thing. And so it's so critical for parents to start those habits early and to have those conversations as often as possible so that they can have the best experience. And like I said, they're going to remember that time where they cooked with their mom or dad, or they sat down and they read a book, rather than the parent coming in and they're tired from working all day and, they just want to be on their phones and let their kids be on their phones. In this day and age where technology is so rampant, it's so easy to just, everyone is separated and they're in their own world. But I really feel it's so important to keep the traditional hardcover or softcover book alive, rather than reading a book on a Kindle, having that physical book in your hand, smelling the covers and looking at the illustrations, because there's so much work that goes on behind the scenes when you're creating content. Everything from what the character is going to look like to what they're going to say to what the next scene is going to be. And it's so exhilarating to be a part of that process and to see it come to fruition. So I'm very excited about these 2 books and really getting the message out there to parents and to children.
Yeah. Hey, Katie, I want to take this opportunity. You mentioned that you have a physical difference and disability yourself. We recently had 2 moms of kids with different disabilities and differences on the show. They wrote separate books. One of them was a parent of a kid with a severe intellectual and neurological disability. So the kid isn't able to do a lot of things for themselves. The other parent was a parent of a kid who is missing a limb. So that physical disability and difference. And they both encouraged conversation about the disability, but they had a slightly different perspective. I want to share it with you and see what you think. I don't think either one is right over the other. I think it's just very interesting. The mom of the kid with the intellectual disability is like, hey, come on up and ask me about my kid. Ask me what's going on. Find out why she needs help doing this or why he can't speak. The mom of the kid with the physical difference said that she wants kids to go up, and the first question she wants kids to ask her son is, do you want to play with me? And then at that point, after you develop a friendship, if you're curious, ask those questions. What about you, as somebody who grew up with a challenge? Do you have an opinion on that, on when people and how people should ask questions?
I love that question, and it's really getting me to think about my own life and what I would prefer. And I think there's no hard and fast answer to that, because every individual who has a disability is going to feel very different about it. And so it's nice to hear two very different perspectives on how they view it and how they'd like to be treated. And I would say that the mother who wants their child to have people come up and ask questions is normalizing or standardizing that disability. They're not treating it as something that's to be ashamed of or something to not be talked about. And I love that perspective, because I think it's so important for a kid to not feel like it's something completely different or separate from who they are. It's definitely a part of who they are, and it may be visible and it may not be. But I think for the mother to normalize that and to encourage their child to be open to the conversation rather than feeling ashamed when someone wants to ask a question, it almost impedes other people from wanting to go up and talk to them, because they don't want to offend that individual or that child, right? They don't want to scare them away. And then with the other mother who wants the children to just come up and say, hey, will you play with me? I think that's just as valid of a response, because there are people out there who don't want to be seen for their disability first. They want to, have someone come up and talk to them because they just genuinely want to know who they are, not because of their disability, but because they want to play with someone. They want to have a good time. And I think that that is also such a valuable perspective. And for me, as a woman with a physical disability, I was actually born without my right hand and my right leg. And there is no solid explanation as to why I was born this way. But it's something that I've had to live with my entire life. And there have been moments in my life where I've wanted to address the elephant in the room and say, this is something you're going to see right away. Let me talk about it, right? This is me. I was born this way, blah, blah, blah. And then there have been other times where I don't want that to be the first thing that we talk about. Let's just talk about the weather or what we watched on TV or where we want to go on vacation. It's not, hi, I'm Katie and I have this disability, because the majority of people out there in society are not walking up and introducing themselves and then saying something that may be visible or not, right? We don't need to lead with that as the conversation starter. Yeah. We're just people first, and then we have a disability second. Yeah. And so again, the hard and fast answer is that you're going to find people who may lean one way or may lead another way, and that's completely okay. And I think when we normalize having the conversation and don't deter people from, wanting to ask questions, I think it opens up more productive dialogue with parents, with children, with anyone in the world who may be looking for a little bit of education. Mm-hmm. And I think that's so critical.
One of the things you said, I think, is so important, and I think is ultimately the answer. We've come to a point in our society where we don't typically use words like, oh, he's disabled, she's handicapped, she's crippled. that's a person with a difference. That's a person with a disability. And so in our language, we are putting the person first. I hope that we also continue to do that in the way we see people. And that so that we're sure we can see a difference, but let's first see the human being. Let's first see the person that is part of our human family before we see anything else.
Absolutely. I love that perspective. And I think that really goes to show that, we're remembering our humanity, right? We're people first, and we may be struggling with something, again, whether that be seen or unseen, but that doesn't completely fully define who we are. Mm-hmm. And I will say that people who have disabilities are some of the most kind, courageous, and creative individuals that I've ever met. And I'm actually a chapter leader of a local business resource group at my company, and I lead the Possibilities Business Resource Group. And the goal of that group is to really spread more awareness and education for people who identify as disabled, but also to encourage allyship, because people don't need to have a disability to be part of this group. It's something that anyone can join. All are welcome. And it's about encouraging the conversation between everyone about how important it is to see people first rather than view them through the lens of disability.
Right.
And I actually follow a guy on Instagram who I just happened to come across because I'm an author, and now I'm starting to see children's books and ads and things like that. And there's a guy out there who is physically blind, but he is also a children's author, and he writes books and is super creative. And it just goes to show that there are so many people out there finding really creative ways to get around what we would deem an obstacle or a challenge. And I think that's really great for children to see as well, or for adults who, may find opportunities to complain or find fault in their own life or something to, that there is worrisome, right? And we all have to remember that at some point in our lives, there's going to be hardship, and it's all about how we view things. And if we can view things in a positive light, I think we can get through anything.
Absolutely. Well, I know people are going to want to know where they can go to find out more about Don't Say No to H2O. Water is so good. And find out more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't have an author website just yet. I'm still new to that space. However, if you would like to purchase my book, you can find it by going on Amazon and searching Don't Say No to H2O. Water is so good. You'll be able to see a little bit about me and be able to purchase the book. And also be on the lookout for my next book titled I Love You, My Child very soon.
Wonderful. We've had a great time speaking to the author of Don't Say No to H2O. Water is so good. The debut picture book from our guest, Katie Krause. Katie, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much, Jed. Appreciate it. And don't forget, drink water.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Michael Yam. He'll be here to celebrate fried rice and marinara. I love it. That's the next episode of the podcast. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we want to start by thanking our guest, Katie Krause. Please be sure to check out Don't Say No to H2O. Also want to thank our sponsors, Dr. Ambrose Pasterna. Rex's Journey is the name of her book. It's wonderful. You definitely want to check it out. We also want to thank Mark David Pullen, the author of the great middle grade novel, Oasis King. I want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Monica Rivera Sosa, Ann O'Leary, Stoji, Franklin, Madison, Dieris. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.